All right, everyone, it's taken me a little while to kind of unpack what I'm thinking about these raids. And so I'm a little concerned that there are new prescriptions for exact teams required to do the Annihilation raid. Now, I could be overthinking it, but in the past, we've had a little bit more agency in what characters we bring up to get through some of these nodes because we had specific traits like mutant, tech, etc. And it looks like as we progress to these more challenging raids, they really want to have us build these teams in their full complexity and their full potential. So there's a couple of things I want to unravel here. So we got this update, and basically they said you have these difficulties that are going to change here. Looks like purple ISO 4 is not a requirement, which will be interesting to see. Obviously, the origin traits are going to be for the early accessibility, and then as you go into these, you'll have to build specific teams, and then the newest raid teams. So, what we'll show you really quickly here is, and I'll share this link that's been circulating on Discord, that you have some actual recommended, well, the actual required teams for the difficulty, so you know what you will need to build to get through them. So we're going to say, hey, if you're using Old Man Logan or you're using Professor X, now suddenly he's no longer viable in the end game difficulty. So is it a big deal? I don't have an answer. I think I would love for everyone to kind of leave a comment on what they think, because I think that for me impacts the overall effectiveness of mythic characters. So the ones available in Dark Dimensions, etc. Well, specifically Dark Dimensions and Saga so far. These characters have had many impacts, but most of them have become raid viable, or at least raid options in some way, shape, or form during their acquisition. The first raid where they really were impactful was Doom in the Tech raid. Even having Ultron in some of the old school Ultimates raids was helpful, but more specifically, Mephisto and Odin in the current raids for Mystic, and then Professor X and Old Man Logan just making the mutant raids easier. So the idea that this is changing makes me feel like they're prescribing more specific game modes. And I'll get into a little bit more in that in a minute, more specific, characters for game modes. It feels like there's a little bit less agency. So obviously they talk about the rewards. G20 will be the reward for the end game. And then obviously building for a character that you won't be using in the raids, at least for the time being. So this is the point where a nihilist is going to come to the game and instantly not be end game viable in raids. And that's the impact I want to help me understand where you are in the game, if that makes you less or more excited for the character. Again, he'll be impactful elsewhere is my opinion. And it all could change. They may add that, to the node requirements and say, hey, we wanted to add a nihilist to the raid and make sure you were able to kind of progress through the new challenges. They could always do that. So again, this is the raid map. This will be linked. There's also a poll here. Now, the reason why I'm showing you guys this poll is there's going to be a spend core currency, these flames that we saw in the game yesterday. Currently, there is a poll that gets you 50 cores and 50 energy. Not a ton, but it looks like there's going to be another vote in 24 hours. So I've got to see what that means, if there's another vote coming to the game. So stay tuned. If they do that, then this will help with your core collections over the next few days here to help with these progressions. Again, I guess my problem with these raids comes down to the fact that the characters. So I'm gonna take one character that I find to be one of the most prescriptive in the current raids, and the reason why I'm going to showcase this is I think this is what's wrong with raid teams in general, and it's highlighted by a character, but it goes across other characters because of the fact that they really, unfortunately, are utilizing near full teams to make them viable. So on Hyperion's passive, you have to have 4 or more Thunderbolt allies. Good luck. And then enemies cannot gain counter, and the first time this character gets attacked, fill speed bar for self and all Thunderbolt allies. So if this was less, then it would be less prescriptive. So hear me out. I wonder if they're struggling, and based on my own roster, I can show you that in a little bit here. It may very well be that my own roster may be indicative of adoption rates by players building up characters that are less viable on the team by inserting other characters that have overlap. What that means is perhaps you didn't build Cyclops because you built Old Man Logan. So what happens is they're ascribed lifetime value on these characters. Lifetime value mean how much they expect a player to invest in the character is lower because of the fact that in their window of maximum viability, players aren't leveling them to their maximum capability because there's other characters in that pool, which means that they're forcing us to have all 4 characters for the raids and have ISO, etc. And then also Overpower going to PvE. So maybe they delay Overpower coming to PvE because of this. So Marvel Strike Force is different than some of the other games in this genre because realistically, despite legendary, mythic, and epic characters, when you roll the dice on a character, most of the characters are viable in a small window based on the current power creep. About 1/3 of your roster at any point in time is viable. And that rotates relatively quickly. Each and every patch that comes to the game, every either month, is between 3 to 5 characters that are being pushed onto your players. And this is not even including reworks coming to the game in that time period. We very rarely have had it hit that 5. I think maybe it's 3 to 4 lately. And so idea is they're the most profitable when they're selling new characters. All that being said, they're giving away a free legendary now just by showing up to the game. So they're going to prescribe teams a little bit more in depth. So as a thought experiment, I really wanted to understand how many teams we have to build for the game. So let's say there's 20 war teams, 10 on offense, 10 on defense, right? Wait, is it 8 or is it 10? I don't know. Whatever. There's 6 in Crucible. Times 2 is 12. And then there's the raid teams. Now, one thing that I'm hoping, because we're seeing Uncanny Avengers shifting over to this raid, maybe something replaces the Spotlight raids as a more challenging and fun game mode going forward. That's the only way I can think of that this could be interesting, is they give us these prescriptive raids as the base and then have kind of a loose format for these more challenging raids so they can really build and make them more exciting for us with the raid traits being available and a wide roster allowed. I don't know what their intentions are. They keep that relatively close to the chest. And so for the moment being, I'm a little bit worried about the new restrictions prescribing more investment in characters that have less impact in raids. And then me not having the ability to have cross-viable teams. Now, again, some of these teams in raid have also been war viable, and some game modes have allowed for multiple viability based on how they're designed. But ultimately, Marvel Strike Force wants to make every team unskippable. And so when you see someone go, skip this team or skip this character, I think Marvel Strike Force devs are looking at that and saying, how did we make that absolutely vital for players to build? So again, looking at the game from a long-term lens, I'm hopeful they figure this out, that they can build new fun content by making a fully prescriptive raid that allows them to, to pump out more raid teams and have already built raid teams, and then put us in a position where we have access to more of our roster for a new, exciting, rewarding raid. But I wouldn't hold your breath. Anyway, I do things so you don't have to. Take a look at my new account. We are 72 days in. I'm already in Dark Dimension 8 doing some of the nodes and hope to, you know, probably get Odin before some of the other characters. I'm level 90 and likely won't be 95 for quite some time. So love you much. Thanks for hanging out with me, and we'll see you again soon.